I want you to think about what you had for dinner last night, and then I want you to think about whether you reheated it, because what I'm about to tell you has nothing to do with whether the food was healthy. It has everything to do with what happens to that food the second time it gets hot. I've been in preventive medicine for over 20 years. I've worked alongside oncologists and cardiologists. I've reviewed patient histories that made no sense on the surface. People who ate well, exercised, didn't smoke, and still ended up with damaged arteries and disease markers that had no obvious explanation. Until we looked at one thing, not what they were eating, how they were reheating it. The same food, the same kitchen, the same person trying to do everything right. But something was happening inside those leftovers that was quietly working against them every single day. Stay with me, because by the time this video is over, you will never look at your leftovers the same way again. Here's what most people believe. If a food was healthy when you first cooked it, it's still healthy when you heat it up the next day. I understand why you'd think that. It makes complete sense. But here's what I've learned after 2 decades of working with patients over 60. The chemistry inside certain foods changes dramatically when they're reheated. And that change produces compounds your body was never designed to process repeatedly. Not once, not twice, but day after day, meal after meal. In amounts that accumulate silently until the damage shows up somewhere, it's very hard to ignore. After 60, your body's ability to neutralize these compounds is slower. Your liver processes them differently. Your cells repair themselves less efficiently. The same reheated meal that a 35-year-old handles without noticeable consequence is doing something measurably different inside a body that's been running for 65 or 70 years. That's not a criticism. That's just biology. And it's biology that nobody is explaining clearly enough. My name is Dr. Ben Bates. I've spent more than 20 years in preventive medicine, focused specifically on protecting the health of adults over 60. I've sat with patients who were genuinely confused, people who were careful, informed, doing their best, and walked them through the exact patterns that were slowly working against them. Today, I want to do the same for you. 5 foods. 5 things that are probably in your refrigerator right now. And 5 things that become genuinely harmful the moment you reheat them. Now, the one that surprises people most is number 3. When I tell patients about that one, they almost always say the same thing. I've been doing that my entire life. That's exactly the problem, and that's exactly why I want you to stay for it. Let's start. The first one is the one most people think they already know about. Fried food, fried chicken, French fries, anything cooked in vegetable oil, sunflower, corn, soybean, canola. Most people know fried food isn't ideal. But here's what almost nobody understands. The real danger isn't eating it fresh. The danger is what happens when you reheat it the next day. Here's why. Vegetable oils are chemically unstable. When you heat them the first time, they begin to break down. When you heat them again, that breakdown accelerates. The oil oxidizes, and in that process, it releases compounds called aldehydes. I want you to understand what aldehydes are. They are the same toxic compounds found in cigarette smoke. I'm not being dramatic. That's the chemistry. That's what's being released inside your reheated leftovers when the oil gets hot a second time. What do aldehydes do inside your body? They attack the inner walls of your blood vessels. They trigger oxidative stress, which is essentially a kind of cellular rust that damages the cells lining your arteries. Over time, that damage causes inflammation. The arterial walls thicken and stiffen. Blood pressure climbs, and the risk of clot formation goes up significantly. But here's the part that concerns me most from a cancer standpoint. Aldehydes are also free radicals. And free radicals damage DNA. They attack the genetic material inside your cells. When you're younger, your body repairs that damage quickly and efficiently. After 60, that repair system slows down. Errors slip through. And when enough errors accumulate in the wrong cells, that's how serious cellular illness begins. So what do you do with leftover fried food? Don't microwave it. Don't add more oil to a pan. If you're going to eat it the next day, use a low-temperature oven or an air fryer with no added oil. Better yet, eat it cold. Cold-fried food doesn't reheat the oil. The chain reaction doesn't restart. The damage stops there. Now the second one. This is the one that genuinely troubles me because it involves food that is legitimately healthy when handled correctly. Leafy greens, spinach, kale, Swiss chard, collard greens. You cook a big batch on Sunday evening. You put the leftovers in the fridge. Monday morning, you scoop some into a pan, heat it up, and eat it with your eggs. It feels like one of the healthiest things you can do. And here's what's actually happening. Raw leafy greens contain natural compounds called nitrates. On their own, in their raw form, largely harmless. Your body handles them well, but once you cook leafy greens and let them sit, even in the refrigerator, bacteria begin converting those nitrates into a different compound called nitrites. That conversion starts almost immediately at room temperature. It slows in the fridge, but it doesn't stop. Now here's where it gets serious. When you reheat those greens, the heat causes the nitrites to react with proteins in the food. The result is a class of compounds called nitrosamines. The World Health Organization classifies nitrosamines as probable human carcinogens, linked specifically to stomach, esophageal, and colon cancers. But the damage isn't only about cancer risk. Nitrosamines also trigger direct inflammation inside your blood vessels. They damage the inner lining of your arteries, the delicate layer that controls blood flow and pressure. When that layer is inflamed and damaged, blood pressure becomes harder to regulate, and the risk of clot formation increases. So you're facing a double threat from one reheated pan of spinach: cancer risk and cardiovascular inflammation at the same time. The fix is simple, but it requires a change in how you think about leafy greens. Cook only what you're going to eat right now. If you have leftover cooked greens, eat them cold. Add them to a salad. Toss them into a grain bowl. Never microwave them. Never reheat them in a pan. And one more thing I want you to remember. Don't leave cooked greens sitting on the counter. Even 1 hour at room temperature accelerates the nitrite conversion significantly. Into the fridge within 30 minutes of cooling. Cold, not reheated. Let me ask you something. How many times a week do you reheat rice? Type a number in the comments. Because what I'm about to tell you is one of the most important things in this entire video. And it's also one of the least talked about. Rice. Plain, simple, neutral rice. The staple food of half the world. And one of the most consistent sources of a very specific kind of internal damage I've traced in patient after patient over 60. Here's what's happening inside your leftover rice, and why reheating it doesn't fix the problem. When you cook rice, the heat kills most bacteria. But one particular bacteria, called Bacillus cereus, plays by completely different rules. Its spores survive boiling. They go dormant in the heat. Then when the rice cools down, they wake up and they multiply fast. Most people think, fine, I'll reheat the rice thoroughly. That kills the bacteria. And you're right, reheating does kill the bacteria. But here's the part that changes everything. It does not destroy the toxins the bacteria already produced while the rice was cooling. These are heat-resistant toxins. You can heat that rice until steam is rising off it, and those toxins are still there, still active, still ready to do damage. In the short term, you might feel nauseous, maybe some discomfort, a rough few hours. But here's what I want you to understand about the long term. Repeated exposure to these toxins, 2 or 3 times a week over months and years, creates a state of chronic intestinal inflammation. And chronic intestinal inflammation is not a local problem. The gut and the cardiovascular system are connected through multiple biological pathways. Inflammatory signals travel through the bloodstream. Changes in gut bacteria directly affect how your body regulates cholesterol and blood pressure. I've had patients come to me with unexplained cardiovascular inflammation, normal weight, no smoking history, reasonable diet. And when I walked through their daily habits, one thing kept appearing: reheated rice, every single day, sometimes twice a day. After 60, your gut lining is thinner and more permeable than it was at 40. Toxins and inflammatory signals get through more easily. The barrier is simply not as strong as it once was. The fix: cool your rice fast. Get it into the refrigerator within 1 hour of cooking. Store it no longer than 24 hours. Reheat it once and only once, never a second time. Better yet, cook smaller portions. Only what you need for that meal. How long does your rice usually sit on the counter before going in the fridge? Think about that honestly. Now, I want to tell you about a patient I'll call Frank, 71 years old, meticulous man, former accountant. He tracked his calories. He cooked at home every night. He was proud of how carefully he managed his health. When he came to me, his inflammatory markers were elevated. His blood pressure was unstable. His energy had dropped noticeably over the past year. We went through everything: his medications, his exercise routine, his sleep. And then I asked him about his weekly meals. He described a very organized system. He cooked large batches on Sunday, portioned everything into containers, and reheated throughout the week. Chicken every day, rice at almost every meal, cooked spinach in the mornings, every one of those three things, reheated daily. I walked him through exactly what I'm telling you now. He made 3 specific changes. He stopped reheating the chicken in the microwave. He stopped reheating the rice entirely, started cooking smaller portions fresh. He stopped reheating his spinach and started eating it cold in salads. 6 weeks later, he came back. His inflammatory markers had dropped. His blood pressure had stabilized enough that his doctor was discussing reducing one medication. He looked at me and said, "I thought I was being disciplined. I didn't realize I was creating the problem." That sentence stayed with me. Now the 4th food. And this one, I want you to pay very close attention because it involves something most people eat several times a week. Chicken. Reheated chicken is one of the most common sources of repeated low-level bacterial exposure I see in patients over 60. And the reason almost always comes down to one thing: the microwave. Here's what most people don't know about how microwaves work. They heat food by exciting water molecules, but not evenly. Microwaves penetrate food in irregular patterns and create what food scientists call cold zones, areas inside the food that receive little or no heat during the reheating process. You can't see them. The outside of the chicken looks hot. Steam is rising. But inside those cold zones, the temperature never reaches a safe level. That's where bacteria survive. Salmonella, Campylobacter, Listeria. Now, one episode of food poisoning is unpleasant. A bad day. Your body fights it off. But that's not what I'm concerned about. What concerns me is the pattern: repeated low-level bacterial exposure. Your immune system mobilizes to respond. It releases inflammatory signals into your bloodstream, small amounts each time. But if this happens 3 or 4 times a week over months, those inflammatory signals are circulating constantly. And what they do to your arteries over time is exactly what I described with the other foods. They damage the vessel walls. They promote plaque formation. They make blood more prone to clotting. I've traced this pattern in patients who looked, on paper, like they were doing everything right. The microwave was the variable nobody had identified. The fix is straightforward. If you're reheating chicken, use the oven. Cover it with foil at a moderate temperature. It heats evenly. No cold zones, or eat it cold. Cold sliced chicken on a salad is one of the best options after 60. If you absolutely must use the microwave, cut the chicken into small pieces first, heat it, then let it rest for 2 full minutes before eating. That rest time allows the heat to distribute more evenly. But honestly, get the chicken out of the microwave. And now the 5th food. This one has a twist that I think is genuinely fascinating. Because the problem isn't just about bacteria or toxic compounds. It's about what reheating does to the structure of the food itself. Potatoes. When you reheat a potato, especially in a microwave or back in a hot oven, 2 separate things happen at the same time. The first involves a compound called acrylamide. When starchy foods are cooked at high temperatures, a chemical reaction occurs between natural sugars and an amino acid in the food. The result is acrylamide, classified by the International Agency for Research on Cancer as a probable human carcinogen. The first time you cook a potato, acrylamide forms. When you reheat it, more forms on top of what's already there. Every reheating cycle compounds your exposure. And after 60, your body detoxifies acrylamide less efficiently than it did 20 years ago. The same exposure does more damage. But here's the second thing happening at the same time. And this is the part that affects your heart directly. A freshly cooked potato that has been allowed to cool develops something called resistant starch. Resistant starch behaves like dietary fiber inside your body. It feeds healthy gut bacteria. It slows the release of sugar into your bloodstream. Blood sugar rises gradually, gently. The moment you reheat that potato, the resistant starch converts back into regular starch. Regular starch digests rapidly. Your blood sugar spikes sharply. Your body releases a surge of insulin to compensate. For someone over 60 with any degree of insulin resistance, those sharp blood sugar spikes cause oxidative stress directly inside your blood vessel walls. They accelerate arterial stiffening. They contribute directly to high blood pressure and cardiovascular disease. So one reheated potato is simultaneously increasing your carcinogen exposure and triggering a cardiovascular stress response. At the same time. Every time. The fix, and this one is actually quite enjoyable. Eat potatoes cold. A cold potato salad dressed with extra virgin olive oil, lemon, and herbs is one of the smartest meals you can make after 60. The resistant starch stays intact. Blood sugar stays stable. The acrylamide exposure stops compounding. If you need them warm, cook fresh ones. Low heat, short time. Now let me zoom out for a moment, because I want you to see the bigger picture. Each of these 5 foods, when reheated, feeds the same underlying process: chronic inflammation, silent, invisible, painless, burning slowly inside your arteries, inside your gut, inside your cells, day after day, while you go about your life feeling mostly fine. After 60, this matters more than it did before. Not because you're fragile, but because the margin for error has genuinely narrowed. What your body could absorb quietly at 45 accumulates differently at 68. And the most important thing I want you to hear, the thing I say to every patient I work with, this process is reversible. Inflammation responds to what you feed it. When you stop feeding the fire starts to go down. Arteries become less inflamed. Blood pressure stabilizes. Energy improves. I've watched it happen in patient after patient who simply changed how they handled their leftovers. Not a new medication, not a dramatic lifestyle overhaul, just 5 simple changes in the kitchen. Let me give you the full picture, clearly and quickly. Food 1, fried food. Don't reheat it in oil or the microwave. Oven or air fryer at low temperature, or eat it cold. Food 2, leafy greens. Cook only what you'll eat immediately. Leftovers go cold into salads. Never reheat cooked spinach or kale. Food 3, rice. Refrigerate within 1 hour of cooking. Use within 24 hours. Reheat once and only once. Better, cook smaller portions fresh. Food 4, chicken. Out of the microwave entirely. Oven with foil or eat it cold. If you use the microwave, cut it into pieces and let it rest 2 minutes after heating. Food 5, potatoes. Embrace them cold. Cold potato salad with olive oil is genuinely one of the best things you can eat after 60. If you need them warm, cook them fresh, low heat. None of these changes require you to give up foods you love. They just require you to think differently about timing and temperature. And here's what I've seen happen when patients make these 5 changes consistently. In the first week, digestion often improves. Less bloating, less heaviness after meals. By the second week, energy levels start to shift. Several patients have described waking up feeling less foggy. By the end of the first month, in patients who were monitoring their blood pressure, readings often begin to stabilize in ways their previous habits weren't allowing. Not from medication, from removing a source of daily inflammation that had been quietly running in the background for years. I want to close with something I genuinely believe. The kitchen is one of the most powerful places in your life after 60. Not the pharmacy, not the doctor's office, the kitchen. Because what happens 3 times a day in that room either feeds the inflammatory process I've described or begins to quiet it. You now know which 5 foods to handle differently. You now know why. You now know exactly what to do instead. That knowledge is yours. What you do with it tonight, that's up to you. Which of these 5 foods surprised you most? Leave it in the comments. I genuinely want to know. And if someone you care about is over 60 and reheating these foods right now, please share this video with them, not to alarm them, to give them what you now have. Information that could quietly change what happens to their health over the next year. If this video was useful to you, hit the like button. It helps more people over 60 find this information. And subscribe if you haven't already. Because every week I bring you honest, specific, practical information that I wish every patient had access to long before things got serious. Take care of your health. Take care of your arteries. Take care of the person sitting in your kitchen who deserves to know exactly what I just told you. Everything shared in this video is general medical information based on published research and clinical experience. It is not a substitute for your personal medical care. Please speak with your own physician before making any significant changes to your diet or health routine.